Good afternoon. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming. This is the postgraduate course from the SVS Leadership Development Committee. My name is Ruth Bush, and I'm the chair of that committee, and this is a new committee that was put forth by our current president, Dr. Julie Freischlag, and this is our first event that we are holding as part of our strategic plan going forward. So what we're going to talk today about, and then do breakout sessions to have more interaction, is about social styles and versatility. This is the committee on the left-hand side, myself and the members, and then the moderators today, which will be myself, Doug Wooster, and Bhagwan Satiani. So the objectives of the course today are to define leadership, and you'll hear from a couple of leaders in our didactic session about how it differs from management and recognize characteristics of exceptional leaders, what has worked for them. We're also then in our breakout sessions, you're each going to do a social style survey, which we have all done. It's very short. And we will be explaining social styles before we go in the breakout sessions, but then understanding your social style preference and those of others so that you can work well with them and leverage the strengths of each style to bring forth your results and make your team work well. And then learn how to work with each style to build trust as well as manage conflict. So those are the objectives going forth for this session. And now I would like to introduce our the head moderator, which is Bhagwan Satiani, professor of clinical surgery from Ohio State.
So I'm going to give you a rundown of what to expect for this afternoon. We have no disclosures. The committee as a whole has obtained copyright material from TRACOM Incorporated, but there's been no payment made, no obligations in terms of money or anything. And certainly the leadership committee has worked with the material and used it to our advantage. Leaders come in all shapes, sizes, different cultures, different genders, races, and there's no magic formula in business or in healthcare to tell you what makes a perfect leader. There is no such thing. So you can read a bunch of books and articles and try to get the gist of what a good leader should be like, but a matter of fact, it comes down to real basics, and I think that's the focus of this session, is getting to the main issue. Leaders don't proclaim themselves. They don't get up and say, well, I'm the leader. It's the people behind you that discover that you're a leader. And so one theme is clear. The ability to understand people that you're leading is what makes you a leader. If you don't understand what your followers are about, or you don't relate to them, all the leaders that are successful will tell you that, is that you will fail. If you don't understand what people think about you or your leadership style. So before you get into leadership, you've got to know yourself. Every major book you read, every article you read about leadership, they will all tell you the same thing. It's about self-awareness. It's about you being aware of yourself and your own style. What does that mean? It means how you come across to others. That's it. That's the key. So once you know how you come across, how your behavior comes across, then you learn to self-manage that behavior. We can't change who we are, right? I mean, there's no way you change. You are who you are. But it's how you manage yourself, how you manage your impulses, your preferences, and then how you, if there are deficiencies, how you develop those deficiencies. That's the key to leadership. And all the major successful leaders will tell you that. So today, our task is, and we've chosen simply one tool. You can survey the literature, and there are many, many tools to look at your own style or look at your own behavior. This is just one. It's called social style. It's copyrighted. It's run by a company called TRACOM. So you will do your own survey, as Ruth pointed out, later on when we break out, and you will learn about yourself and what your behavioral styles are. You will understand your behavior and the people at your table and how you come across to them, and you will learn to use the social style so you're more productive when you're leading people and your teams. So this didactic part will be approximately an hour, 10 minutes. We will then go to 306, room 306 right across where lunch was, and you will do your survey, and we'll have group discussion. We have facilitators going around making sure you're working in the right general place as far as leadership. After that, we will have a case study or two that you will be asked to do and discuss in groups, and finally we'll wrap up and finish off the session. So to lead things off, we have our leader, Julie Freischlag, and her perspective on what is leadership. Julie?
So thanks so much. I really am excited about this course. We are going to continue to do this each year, and actually next year plan on having it a full day session, because when you look around the country, leadership courses that are offered by Harvard and American College of Surgeons are really oversubscribed, because we're all striving to be better leaders. And I thought the choice of looking at different leadership styles is fabulous. And when I took my survey, I did it in the car with my husband, so we took it simultaneously to see where we differed, and we only differed on 3 questions, which I actually was surprised at, because you'll meet my husband this time. You never see my husband. He had to come to the meeting this year, and he'll be here. He's a little different if you see him from the outside about how he is, but if you look at leadership styles, it looks like we were probably the same. So you'll really enjoy taking that survey, and the way to learn all this is through these case scenarios and listening to the other people in your group, because they're going to have different ideas, and that's actually how you learn to be a leader, is not having all the answers, but listening to the other people in your group, because they'll give you the answers. I just started a new job 3 months ago. I just saw my email. My chancellor wants me to evaluate myself after 3 months. I guess I'll just say I'm breathing is probably the best one, but I've been spending 3 months meeting people, looking at my team, and trying to evaluate teams. And it's so great to be able to ask your team, what do you think, especially when you're new to a new place. So I'm just giving you a little introduction about leadership, and what I want to talk a little bit about being a great leader. I think I'm a better leader now after being a division chief and a department chair at Hopkins, division chief for 5 years, department chair for 11 years, than I've ever been before. And it wasn't till I listened to a woman named Huffington, who runs an electronic journal. She ran for governor of the state of California, who talked about her leadership style at the AMWA conference, that I think about being a good leader versus a great leader. And you're here because you want to be a great leader. And what happens when that occurs? And when I reflected back, it's true. Frequently, great leaders come out of a traumatic event. And when this traumatic event occurs, you actually shift your focus and turn into someone differently. And when I thought back to when I became a better leader was when I moved to Wisconsin and worked under the auspices of John Town. Many of you know I had just undergone a divorce, and I really sort of had to reinvent myself. And in that time, I went back to Milwaukee, regrouped, and then came back to UCLA to be the division chief over everybody that trained me, which will be a book someday. But it does cause you to have some self-reflection. So whether that traumatic event is divorce, an illness, loss of a parent, perhaps a failed job somewhere else, something will have happened to you. And if you're lucky, it's already happened. So now you'll get to jump in to be a great leader. But if you're younger, it actually may happen along the way. And those are things that happen you can't control. So luckily, hopefully you'll find something that charged you. And I think that's when I had to regroup my life, recalibrate who I was, It caused a lot of self-reflection and introspection. So that can be any of those events that bother you. And it may not even been something catastrophic. It could be your child leaving the house where there's no one left at home, or it could be a divorce like I had, or whatever it was, your house burning down. Think of something like that actually when that happens, you come out with more emotional intelligence, and you'll have some discussion about that today, really looking at how you are perceived by others. And surgeons, by and large, I think we're blind to emotional intelligence. I think I witnessed, as you did, and I was trained, if a door closes, the best way is to pound on the door till someone opens it. That's how I was trained. And now I think you'll find the best way is to go through another door. That's what leaders do, is that you realize that's it, and that you could scream and yell and rant and rave, and we all know how to do it, and maybe did it in the past. It works for a short period of time. Then people will ignore you, and then they will avoid you, and therefore you're no longer a leader because no one's following you anywhere. So when you go from good to great leadership, I'm going to tell you, you go from a verb to an adjective. So for surgeons, we like it simple, right? Okay, so I was a verb. I was a really good verb. When I was younger, I could tell mentees what to do, where to go, how I did it. I could tell anybody anything what to do because I was what I thought leading in the first 10 years of my life and telling everybody what to do because I thought that's what a strong leader looked like. Now that I'm going to tell you, after my traumatic event, my divorce and recalibrating, I became an adjective. And I think being an adjective leader is way more powerful. That's why you can go be a dean and vice chancellor, or you can run a department of surgery, or you can do any of these things. Be a politician. We're going to meet a politician this week as well who's a surgeon, is that you become an adjective. And then after having my son, I had a son who's 19 now, who's an introvert. Can you imagine me, who's an extrovert falling off a cliff? I had an introvert because he showed me a better way to influence people and does to this day. He's 19. And that's the other piece, is that taking two things together to do that. So what is an adjective? Why is this better? So this is a word belonging to one of the major form classes in any of numerous languages, so it's across the board, it's international, and it's a modifier. And that's what I want to tell you as you learn these new ways today. It's a modifier of a noun to denote a quality of a thing, named to indicate its quantity or extent, or to specify a thing as distinct from something else. So you're going to take your people that you're leading, your verbs and your nouns, and you're going to modify them. And you're going to look at what their strengths are and suggest ways they can even be better. And probably the best thing that I was ever told in my life as I left Hopkins is that the two things they said I did for them in my department is I made them better and I had their back. And if you could define what a leader should do, is you make them better and you have their back. And it's about that simple. And the best thing is, it's not about you at all anymore. It wasn't about what I accomplished or where I went or what I did. It's I made them better and I had their back. So as an adjective, you modify and amplify the noun. So you're going to talk about that in your case scenarios today, looking at your mentees. You make them better, but you do not define them. I think that was my biggest mistake. And right now I'm dealing with a chair of a department at Davis who wants all his faculty to look exactly the same, because wouldn't that be easy? If they all did the same, acted the same, and would produce the same. And fortunately, they're not. And so you get to see what they are and define them and make them better. Not all of them are going to be great clinicians. Not all of them are going to do research in private practice. Not all of them are going to be your best aortic surgeon. Not all of them want to work like you. Not all of them want to dress like you. You really need to see who they are and make them better. And you don't need an adjective, but it makes what you're describing better. So the thing is, you don't have to do this. You could just be mundane in your practice. You could be mundane in your group. But if you want to be the best group in town, and if you want to be the best academic unit, if you want to have the best vascular surgery training program or the best lab, becoming an adjective, I think, will be the way you would make that happen. And today, I think you're going to get skills about utilizing many different ways to be an adjective, because the way to motivate people does not work the same way or with the same style with everyone. And the other technique I want you to learn, which is something I've done over the last 5 to 7 years, is as you're talking to someone and they say something absolutely crazy, ludicrous, are you out of your mind? I used to do that, go, what? And even with my eyes, my residents would tell you in the OR, they could see my eyes going, oh my goodness. So you need to get rid of that. And then you become a cartoon character with that bubble. And you put all those horrible things you want to say, they're true, and you want to say, oh my goodness, are you out of your mind? I can't do that. There's no way I can afford that. It's not a chance. And instead you say, why don't you tell me more about that? And then you put all those comments right there, and then use your other style out here. So as you're practicing this afternoon, work on your cartoon bubble where you park all those things you'd love to say but shouldn't say. You get to still express them, so you won't get an ulcer, heart attack, or anything bad. So they're out there, but they're not expressed out there. And sometimes you'll take them back later. So I always end with a quote, and this is my quote today from Jim Collins. And if you haven't read his books, they're fabulous. I read Good to Great as I went to UCLA. I read Why Some Companies Make the Leap when I went to Hopkins, and now I'm reading his latest book as I go to Davis. He's a fabulous author. He's the one about the bus, get everybody on the bus, that you need to have, and get everybody off the bus. So greatness is not a function of circumstance. Greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter of conscious choice and discipline. And surgeons are great at that. We have great discipline, we have great energy. However, we tend to always be a verb. So today I would like you to work on being an adjective. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Freischlag. As always, very inspiring, gives us a lot to think about. Our next speaker is Doug Wooster from Toronto. We're talking about leaders and managers. Doug.
Thanks, Ruth. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the session today, and thank the committee, of which I'm a member, for all the hard work on this. We often talk about leadership, and we talk about leaders, and we talk about managers, and they often get all mixed up, and we're not really sure what we're talking about. I'm hoping to comment on some of that today. I have no disclosures. I'm not sure what an off-label discussion of leadership would be about, but maybe talking about managers is an off-label discussion of leadership. These are the aims of the session, and I think the discussion of social styles and how that impacts is going to be brought forward in the rest of the presentation. So the questions, I guess, are leaders and managers the same thing? And if they're not, if they're different, in what way? And is there overlap? And is that overlap something that adds to a synergy that makes perhaps the manager better, makes perhaps the leader better by exercising that synergy? The definitions that we often see are things that are kind of simplistic. Leaders lead people. Managers manage things. Well, that's a little bit empty and perhaps a little bit old-fashioned. Leaders lead people, but really what leaders do is they inspire their followers to embrace change. And that's some of what we'll be hearing about throughout the rest of the session. Managers do more than just manage things. They instruct employees to adhere to protocols. And there are certain quotes that go with this sort of strategy, this sort of philosophy. And Peter Drucker and Warren Bennis have been often quoted or misquoted as saying, leaders do the right things, managers do things right. And that is a key distinction. Stephen Covey has pointed out that the manager efficiently assigns people to climb the ladder, but the leader addresses where to place the ladder. And again, that's an important distinction. So we'll look at things side by side here and see how the relationships, for instance, of a manager and a leader do differ. The manager is often an authority figure that's imposed by someone else on a group of individuals from an external source, and it's a power relationship that pushes people or pushes things to work in a different way. The leader, on the other hand, has to earn their authority. It's internally shared, and it's an influence relationship, pulling people into the fray. Whereas the manager may be looking at a lot of things that look the same, and the important thing is keeping things looking the same. The leader may be looking at the people, some walking in one direction, some walking in another, and think about how they can walk together to common goals. So the aims and goals of a manager is to address the structure, identify the bottom line, and adhere to it through allocation of resources, whereas the leader has challenges and aims for change and aims to empower those around the leader to improve and make things better. The leader would see this kind of image as an opportunity, something that's chaotic and could be changed into something that's orderly. A manager would see this as chaos, which is bad. So what's the substrate? Well, for the manager, the substrate is best practice and risk management. For the leader, the substrate is ideas and challenges, opportunities, and the vision that comes from that. It's a different mindset between a manager and a leader. The product, as we mentioned, for the manager is to adhere to protocols, have efficient processes that lead to better or lead to the expected outcome, the bottom line. Whereas the leader will be looking for strategies, change, innovation, and future achievements. Again, a different approach. The process to achieve this for the manager and the leader is also different. The manager is working in the system, whereas the leader would be working on the system to change the rules, to take an opportunity and motivate people to inspire achievement. The manager controlling people to coordinate an effort, to react to a situation perhaps before it becomes a crisis in order to keep the system working well. The leader would see the opportunity, the horizon, the distance to go. The manager would see the footprints in the sand, but perhaps not look up much beyond that. The timelines are different, and this again fits with that philosophy of the manager and the leader. The manager should be very focused. It should be a kind of a linear, unidimensional almost focus, whereas the leader sees the fuzziness of things around them and identifies from that opportunities. Hence the metrics, what the manager says, they're looking for facts, numbers, time and motion, budget. The leader's looking for fuzzy metrics. There are novel approaches. They're empowering a team. These are not things that you can perhaps establish a number to. When the leader and the manager are addressing their employees or their team, they speak in different ways. And there have been a lot of research on this, that the manager tends to say I and uses command words. I guess that's Julie's verb, and says go and do, and it's an instruction process. The leader says we, tends to ask a lot, tends to say let's go, it's inclusive, and they're engaging people. The responsibility for what happens, the leader will look at the opportunity and assume the blame if things don't go well, whereas the manager will assign the blame. They will reprimand others, whereas the leader will redirect their team and give credit to the team. The manager takes credit if things go well and assigns blame if it doesn't. People and things, we started off talking about the difference between focusing on things and people. Managers focus on people quite a lot, assigning tasks, instructing people. So it's more than just things. Whereas the leader, it's really the people, the colleagues, the team members that have a process ongoing. So whereas the leader may see this sort of thing as an opportunity, there's something lined up, there's a lot of opportunity, a manager would see this as very disquieting and not something that they can put into order. In the newer way of looking at management and leadership, the manager has to be a leader. Jack Welch said that to become an excellent manager, you can become an excellent manager without being an accomplished leader. But on the other hand, achievement of the team, innovation in place, input from the frontline workers is an important part of the management role now. On the other hand, from the point of view of synergy, the leader has to be able to lead change, identify issues, and Jack Welch tells us again, you cannot become an excellent leader without becoming a good manager. It's the leader's Bill Gates has said, who empower others. Management is about arranging and telling. Leadership is about nurturing and enhancing. A different attitude, but there is some synergy, there's some overlap. In order to do leadership well, good management is required. Thank you very much.
We're going to go ahead and get into the meat of the subject as far as telling you about social styles, what it is, what it means. Like I said before, we want to thank the company and especially this one individual who allowed us to use this material and basically forgave a lot of cost, and a consulting firm with Margie who helped us put this plan together. Everybody here, people who've been around, have been in different positions and have their own experiences. The experiences I remember are with regret. I mean, I think those are the experiences you remember when you've been on committee or leadership positions, and now you look back years later and you say, man, I could have really handled that a lot better. I could have accomplished so much more. And just like Julie said, it's like another door instead of banging on the door. And I think I've banged on the door enough where I got carpal tunnel syndrome. I just wish I'd done things differently. And I think this is a great opportunity, especially for the younger people, to learn from people who've made all the mistakes we have. I keep coming back down to this. I think self-understanding is totally the key. I mean, what triggers do you have? What makes you upset? What makes you unhappy? What creates tension for you? What behaviors create this for you? If you don't understand that and you're in the dark about what you're about, you're going to have an awful hard time understanding somebody when you're working on a committee or a team. And people talk about personalities. Behavior is just part of the entire personality, and Ruth will talk a little bit more about it, but what we're talking about with social styles is understanding your behavior, at least how it's come across to others. You might think you come across a certain way. Social styles is all about how other people perceive you and might be totally different from what you think you're kind of portraying out there. And so today's session is going to help you with that. So this is going to deal with behaviors that are part of your personality that we'll be talking about. This whole social style business was part of a naval research project probably 45 years ago. These researchers were looking at, mostly PhDs obviously, looking at how they could be successful with leaders, and they came across this basic styles. Problem was they didn't validate it. They didn't take into account the different circumstances you are when you act a certain way. So this was taken up by an industrial psychologist by the name of Dave Merrill, who worked on it, and his data is basically empirical, based on millions of surveys now over 40 years. And this is, while there are other tools, I think this is probably the most extensively researched tools. So you can compare it with like the MBTI, which a lot of us, the Myers-Briggs, which a lot of us have taken. But Myers-Briggs is more personality tool, the overall personality tool. Social styles is more a behavioral tool. And as you'll see later in the afternoon, it's really important that you see where you are. So here's what social style accomplishes. It basically looks at the patterns and characteristics of you or the other person you're looking at. It helps you determine the other people's styles, assess your own, and how you actually accommodate other people's needs in terms of styles. And I think Julie was right in mentioning, basically more of a listening before you start doing the telling. And I think that there are three basic premises of social style. One is assertiveness, which means people are mostly, now there's a gray in there, obviously. Nobody will argue it's just one way or the other. There's a gray in there. but it's mostly people either telling or asking the way you deal with people. So it's behavior, we have a tendency one way or the other. And so that's one dimension, is how assertive you are, whether you like to tell people or ask. It can be a sentence, it can be a question mark. It's both saying and doing. Both of those, things you say or things you do. So assertiveness is number one. Second is responsiveness. And that's what Julie was talking about in the OR with their eyes getting big. And that's the responsiveness. That's an emotive behavior. So some of us have a dimension of behaviors is whether you control or display your feelings. And that's what she was talking about. The terms, we actually do this every day. We do this in our lives. We just don't assign a term to it. We don't understand what we're doing sometimes. But that's what it is. It's responsiveness, and whether you control your emotions or they're displayed. So if you look at these two parameters, you come up with this grid, which is being validated. So in the vertical axis, you got responsiveness. You either control your emotion and behavior, or you don't, or it shows up in your face is red, your eyes are this way, or you kind of roll your eyes. The other dimension is assertiveness. You either ask or tell. So that's your basic grid you're going to be dealing with today in the afternoon. And these are all independent categories of human behavior. Merrill's looked at this in many different perspectives, and all the different characteristics we have as a behavior is basically he's been able to come up with these two categories. And you can subdivide them any way you want. But this is your basic thing. The third parameter he's looked at is versatility. You can call it adaptation, you can call it change, whatever you want to call it. Social styles calls it versatility. And this is an observable attempt to modify your behavior to make other people comfortable. Now, understand there's a difference. You might think you're versatile. You think you might have changed your behavior to make the other person feel comfortable. This is not it. It's observable behavior by others. If they think you've modified your behavior so they're more comfortable speaking up or acting a certain way. So assertiveness, responsiveness, and versatility. Let me go through the 4 basic styles. The first one is the driving style. It is a person generally speaks faster. Now, understand there are grays in here. Not everybody that's got a driving style is going to fit neatly in this box. They generally make efforts to set a pace for whatever project things you're doing. They have a present time frame. Let's get the task done right now. We're here for this. Let's just go here. They tend to direct actions rather than wait for other people. And if there's a vacuum, there's a space there, they'll go ahead and be the leader. They don't like inaction, so that's why they're called the control specialists. That doesn't mean they're controlling. They're leading the action. The expressives, and we probably have some in here, more faster pace. They make efforts to get involved. They break routines sometimes. They don't go with the flow of plan. They'll come up with their own. They generally work in a future time frame, are imaginative, more impulsive. They don't like isolation. They generally like to work in teams with other people. They're called the social specialists. The third style is the amiable style. This is a slower pace person who likes to work at a slower pace, good listener, relates to people, present time frame, very, very supportive of people in your work environment, works well at others, doesn't like conflict. If there is conflict, they will avoid it and sit back, and we'll hear more about what they do if you push these people around. So they're the support specialists. The final one is the analytical specialist, the technique specialist. Actually, you can go back in history, and even though you don't know presidents very well, if you think back over the last 5 or 6 presidents, I think you'll kind of get the image of which ones are analytical. I have a couple of people in mind, and we can do that at the tables. But these are people that are slower paced, don't like unpredictably surprises. They're organizers. They're warriors. They generally take on responsibility. It doesn't mean they don't like relationships. They just come across as cold, like they don't care about the relationships. But that's how the observable behavior is. They might think they're okay, but other people don't see them as liking relationships. They're more formal, very cautious in their actions, and personal involvement is generally avoided, kind of like to keep people at a distance. So they're more into technique and analytic stuff. Well, this does sound simplistic, doesn't it? You take people, you divide them up, and you got 4 quadrants, and this is it. It's obviously too simplistic. This is a preferential behavioral style. You know, leadership styles can be different. You can be an authority, you can be the Goldman's different styles. That's a different kettle of fish. There's no such thing as good or bad. This company's taken healthcare workers throughout millions of surveys, and turns out that healthcare workers in general are equal in all 4 quadrants. Okay? Nobody knows about surgeons, by the way. They don't have data on this, so we're one of the first groups to do this. So there's no good or bad thing. It's very hard to pin people to a certain style in 2 minutes. We tend to. You know, we'll try to do that today in 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 minutes, but it's very hard. You might have to go back and rethink and react with the person several times before you accurately peg that person. And remember, 3/4 of people are not in your quarter. So it makes it difficult to deal and engage if 3 out of 4 people are, not there. The issue is the survey is being validated. Not all the features are going to exist in every single social style we've talked about. It deals with behaviors, and if you want to peg somebody down, take time. Probably not a stereotype just because they come across the first action they have fits a certain social style. There are no race and gender differences, by the way. They've looked at their data, and there isn't. Culturally, yes. For example, Asian cultures, they might be and amiable or something, and they come here and it's come across as a totally different style. So cultural differences, yes, they're clearly there. Does social style change over time? Not much. Circumstances will make you change temporarily to a different style, loss of a parent, divorce, things like that. They do change behavior at certain times, but eventually you pretty much go back to where you were. So that's my talk, and we will get more into social styles. And Ruth Bush is going to tell you a little bit more detail about what this involves.
All right, thanks, Bhagwan. I'm going to talk about how it's social style and knowing your social style and be able to recognize that, as Bhagwan said, not 75% of people are not in your corner. It is a fact that I forget often, and we'll give some examples. So I'm going to talk a little bit about behavior and personality and how this fits, and it fits right in with what Dr. Freischlag said. What you say, being verbal, and what you do, your actions, which are the nonverbal cues that you give people, your interpersonal behavior that you interact with people, and some of this talking about behavior sounds touchy-feely. Me being the introvert that I am sometimes I don't like talking about interactions with other people, but as leaders, that's how we influence other people, and we want to be able to have those interpersonal skills. So as Bhagwan says, social style is pattern of actions. We each have one. When you take the survey, you may find that some of the actions and some of the characteristics fit you, some of them don't. And then that differs, again, from personality, which is going to be a combination of multiple things in your life that come together to make you who you are. So there's some observable behaviors up here in terms of saying and doing and opposites on different sides of the chart. And a lot of these pictures, you're going to get a booklet when you take the survey, and they will be in there for you to refer back to and think about yourself and to reflect on yourself. And as Julie again mentioned, the verb and the adjective, I think that is a fabulous analogy to being a manager and being a leader. And I think many of us begin as as the verb. And so you can look at a lot of these observable say and do behaviors that are on the left-hand side of the slide, and these can be in a continuum. Sometimes you're going to be sit back and listen. Sometimes you need to take charge and direct the flow of where a project is going. I guess Julie became more facially controlled over time in the operating room, and many of us do that. It's hard sometimes when somebody's doing something not to use your eyes, since that is all that they see. I've tried to not use inflections in my voice or say, "Are you kidding? Really? Do you really want to do that?" It doesn't usually go over very well. And so, again, leaning back, leaning forward. We were talking in a breakout session we had earlier about, leaning in. How far in is too far in? How often should you do that? So, again, observable behaviors, verbal and nonverbal behaviors, what you do. And so the interaction between people is going to vary depending on what behaviors they're doing and what you're also observing. And again, remember, many of these things are on continuums, and what you're going to do and say are going to differ varying on the situation that you're in. So Bhagwan presented the 4 basic styles, and this has a little bit more detail on this slide. And again, these will be in your booklet for the analytical style, the driving style, the amiable, and the expressive. So again, asking and telling, and the difference between emoting and controlling. And you all could probably guess which corner I'm in the top right one. And I just kind of assume that most people are in my corner. And I'll give you an example. When I first came into the dean's office, I was asked to come into the dean's office and change jobs a couple years ago. At Texas A&M, we had a horrible match year. Our unmatch rate was really high. Our students' USMLE scores had gone down for the 3rd year in a row. So the students were all kind of blogging and getting on Facebook saying we're not preparing them. And we give our students a test that predicts how they're going to do on the USMLE, and over 50% were found to be at risk. So they brought me in. The dean at the time was an anesthesiologist, and so he spoke in language that I understood. He said, "We're hemorrhaging. We need a clamp. We need you to put a clamp on the vessel and stop the bleeding." I said, "Okay, fabulous, something I understand." So I came in and started changing the curriculum and became chair of the curriculum committee, and didn't pay any attention to how controlling I was being and how much telling I was doing. So 6 months later, I get brought in, and the dean says, "Well, you've made a lot of changes. We're doing okay. You really don't care if anybody likes you or not, do you?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." He said, "Well, you came in, you put a clamp on it, you were sort of like a lightning rod," and that was the term that he used to describe me. And so I had to step back and start looking at the folks that were around the table, and I had not done that. I had just come in, I had my plan, I was going to go from point A to point B, and nobody was going to get me off my line. And I have to say that a year later, I've sat back, I've done some observing, and realizing that people bring a lot of things to the table. I wasn't a one-woman show at Texas A&M. I've got hundreds of fabulous faculty that have been there a lot longer than I have and been in education a lot longer than I have, and I wasn't using them to their full potential. So I have to remind myself pretty much, since I am pretty much, when I took the test, you can get a score up to 15. I was 15 and 0 on the driving style. So there was I don't emote. I analyze a little bit, but I don't sit back. I don't care about relationships. And I really need to start rethinking that and remember that 75% of people are not in my corner, and that the group works much better as a group and not as a one-woman show. So the social styles are up here, and again, you'll take the very short quiz and figure out which style you are. And you may be surprised. You may agree with some of the characteristics. You may disagree. And again, it's the overall preponderance of what you answer. So the analytical need to be right. They need to declare things. They are a little more controlling. Driving, we need results. I need to put a clamp on the vessel. Just one more example, I had a curriculum retreat a couple weeks ago, and I went in there saying, we're going to figure this out, we're going to come out with a new plan. And we came out, and I said to the dean, I said, well, I was ready to come into this meeting and walk out after about a 4-hour retreat, ready to close the belly. That's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be ready to close the abdomen. I said, we're still in the pre-op holding area. We're trying to decide on the plan. And he's like, well, that's where they need to be right now. I'm like, yes, they do. So I listened to everyone. Amiable, personal security, more believing in relationships. Those are very important. They want to initiate. Expressives, personal approval, and spontaneity. So again, you're going to fit predominantly into one of these styles, and that's going to be your innate behavior. And but again, in discussing the cases in the breakout sessions, realize that not everyone is there, and how we need to get the best out of everyone will mean stepping back from those styles. There's going to be causes of conflict, and this is the tension that Bhagwan mentioned, is I need things to go at a fast pace as a driver. So when I sit back with a lot of my basic scientists who want to analyze, come up with data, think about things, revisit it again, and then keep revisiting, it can drive me crazy, and that can cause tension in myself, but realizing that that's how they're going to come to their solution, not in my personal way. So there's going to be areas of conflict in terms of pace, in terms of priorities for the different styles, and again, recognizing that, and that everyone around the table has something to bring. And determining other styles. I find this very hard to do. Some of the things that you will hear is I will, I want, I think, I feel. And those are some cues that you may see in looking at the cases and talking with other people and determining what kind of style they are, which will enable you to engage them, to empower them, and to be the leader and not the manager. Some of the fears of the different styles are on this slide. I do have fear of being taken advantage of and losing control. Expressives have fear of being bored and being rejected. The analytics have fear of being criticized and decision making. And amiables don't want to be alone, and loss of security. And under stress, we have our, as Bhagwan has called it, and you'll see in your booklet, our innate what we revert back to when we're under stress. I become more assertive and energized and try to figure out a way I can regain control. Expressives want to rise to the challenge. They may get stressed. They may flip to the dark side. They may change how they feel. Analytics may withdraw and focus more on the details, and the amiables worry and try to avoid hassles. So again, as Bhagwan explained, on the vertical and longitudinal axes, controlling, emoting, asking, and telling, and you're going to fall somewhere on there on the continuum. And I'll just put some of these again. It's what we've said before, asking and telling, and controlling and emoting. And you're going to fit on one of those slides, or one of those quadrants. And again, you'll see more of this when you take the test and you answer the short little questions about what would you do in certain situations. Do you care about if people like you? And other questions like that. And I guess Julie and her husband were only 3 questions apart. My husband and I are opposite ends of the spectrum. But I think we both consider ourselves leaders, and I think one of the things that has made me try to switch from being a manager and a controller and the driver all the time is realizing that to be a leader, one of the things that I can take away and be proud of is when I watch someone else rise to their potential. And so I have to remind myself that I need to step back, I need to let them rise to their potential, and that there's a lot of fabulous people around us. Thank you. I forgot to introduce Robyn.
That's all right.
So our next speaker is Robyn Macsata. She's our liaison from the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, for which she is chair. Thanks, Robyn.
Hello, everyone. So today, what I'm going to be talking about is, I have no disclosures, versatility. And as Bhagwan said, this is really the third dimension of social style after assertiveness and responsiveness. And I think this is really the juxta of what everybody's trying to get at today, that this is really the most important thing that you can learn from this session is how to be versatile or adaptive to other people's social styles in order to be a better leader. Essentially, versatility is a way that you can recognize your own social style, its strengths and weaknesses, and then recognize others' social styles, their strengths and weaknesses, and find a better way to interact with them. And really, it's the best way to improve interpersonal effectiveness. So why is this important? Well, research shows that a person's versatility rating, which is an indicator of, as Bhagwan said, what others perceive of you. So the support and respect granted to you by others increases as your interpersonal relations increase. Basically saying that you work on making other people more comfortable. And that's what versatility is. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to actually change your social style completely. What it means is that you have to understand other social styles in order to make them feel more comfortable. So, how do we all start off as children? So I think our parents and school and the Catholic Church, for me, taught me the golden rule, which basically says you treat people the way you would like them to treat you. And I think all of us think that way. But when we really think about it, and what we're talking about today, that people with different social styles actually like to be treated in different but predictable ways. So the way we want to be treated may actually not be the way other people want to be treated. So with versatility, we should really be following the platinum rule, not the golden rule, which is treat people the way that they want to be treated. And it's a completely different way of thinking of things. So again, as we've talked about, there's 4 social styles: driving, expressive, analytical, and amiable. And you are going to be one of those 4 styles. Now, if somebody is, say, expressive, and you are expressive, you're going to easily get along with that person. So like everybody's been talking about, we all took the quiz before we came here for the week, and I took the quiz, and then I basically convinced about 10 of my coworkers to take the quiz, and I diagnosed them all before they took the quiz. And I realized my BFF at work is also very expressive, as I am myself, and I'm like, that's why we get along so well. So basically, I have a 1 in 4 shot of getting along well or working well with somebody else. If I just continue to be my expressive style, I just hope that that other person is the expressive style and everything comes easy and nobody needs to change their style because we understand each other. However, again, we have 4 styles, but that person that you could be working with is also going to be a chance of having 4 styles. So if we can diagnose basically what that person is and realize that they are an expressive style and then adapt ourselves to be an expressive style, we have a much higher chance, a 4 in 4 chance or 100% chance of working well with that person. But what it means is that we first need to know ourselves. We need to be able to know what the other person is and what their needs are and to be able to adapt our style. So by doing this, you're going to have a much better chance of working well with others. So again, just to review, high versatility. It's a good ability to recognize style behaviors and determine styles of others. It's a good understanding of how different styles prefer to behave and interact. And then a willingness and ability to respond to others' needs and maintain the comfort level of the person they're interacting with. So as you can see, as you become more versatile, you're focused high on others' tensions and not your own tensions. To say the opposite, a person of low versatility has a poor ability to recognize style behavior and determine the style preferences of others. They have a lack of ability or willingness to respond to others' needs and maintain comfort levels of the person they are interacting with, and they allow their behavior to get in the way of relationships with others and thus harm productivity. So again, their focus is on their tension, not someone else's tension. So the goal here is to focus on other people's tension and become highly versatile. So how do we do this? How do we improve our own versatility? Well, there's really 4 things that we need to work on: image, presentation, competence, and feedback. And if we work on all of this, this will lead to higher versatility. So I'm going to go into each one of these a little bit separately. So versatility, starting with image. This is basically your first impression. And everybody knows when you're just meeting somebody, the first thing you're going to look at is what do they look like? What does their personal workspace look like? So you're looking at how do they dress? How is their grooming? Are they covered in tattoos? What's their personal workspace look like? Is it a big mess or is it organized? So again, I'm going to give a couple examples here. If we give an example of an expressive person, that person may go to work and want to dress in a certain way. However, everybody else at work in the meeting is wearing a suit. So even though you're expressive, you need to adapt yourself to be more formal and wear an appropriate outfit to work or a meeting such as the SVS. However, if then your coworkers want to go to a barbecue, then you can go ahead and you can dress in your expressive style. So you can adapt your behavior to the appropriate circumstance. Presentation. This is your ability to deliver information in a business setting. So basically, when you're giving a speech, such as I'm giving right now, you want to work on the comfort level of the group and make sure that the group can follow your speech, that your delivery is organized, and that your audience is comfortable, that you're using appropriate language. If I'm giving a medical talk to non-medical people, I can't use a bunch of medical jargon. And also audience participation. So we're going to break out into group sessions after this and get everybody to interact, which is going to make everybody understand more and hopefully be more versatile. So an example of this may be somebody with an analytical style that wants every last little detail. So they get up here and they give a speech and they're talking about every last little detail, and all of you in the audience who isn't analytical are just sitting there saying, let's get to the point. I don't really know what you're saying. You're just kind of going on and on and on. So an analytical person would have to recognize this and change their way of presenting. Next, competence. This is a measure of your ability of a number of capacities that affect others' ability to achieve their goals. So basically, I kind of call this professionalism in the medical community. It's your dependability, your contributions to the group, and again, it's a bit of offering new ideas and different ideas and responding to challenging situations differently. It's also being optimistic and saying we can get this job done. Here, an amiable style may have an issue with this because they're always trying to please everybody and they don't want to take risks and offer up new ideas because they're concerned that people may see that as not make people unhappy with them. So they don't want to let that happen. So again, amiable people have to realize they do need to take some risks and think outside the box. Lastly, feedback. This is where our driving styles sometimes have trouble. So again, this is a measurement of your ability to both understand the verbal and nonverbal communication styles of others and to make sure yourself clear to them. Again, it's listening. It's understanding others' viewpoints. It's responding accordingly to their viewpoints and developing mutually beneficial relationships. And again, we've talked about this a bit already, but the driving style sometimes has issues with this, and they need to sit back and listen. When they're listening, they can summarize conversations before and then asking pertinent questions afterwards. So again, when it gets to versatility, there's 4 easy steps. So it should be super easy for all of us to be able to do this, no problem. So first, you need to know yourself. You need to control yourself, and that's probably one of the hardest things to actually do. And then you need to know others, and then you need to do something for others. So I'm just going to do one quick example before I finish. We're going to talk about 2 people working together. We're going to make you the driving style, and you're going to work with an analytical style. So the first thing is you need to know yourself. So what's the driving style? We already spoke about this a bit. You're more oriented toward results than relationships. You have little tolerance for anything you think is a waste of time. You want to get to the matter of fact. Get to the fact of the matter. You make quick decisions. You want to stay on schedule. You don't really care about emotions or people's feelings. You just want to move right along. So you need to realize that about yourself. You need to realize one of the basic things that people with a driving personality need to do is slow down, listen, pay attention to others, ask questions, think about others' emotions. So what's the analytical style? Well, luckily, these people don't care that much about emotions either. Their main issue that you're going to be dealing with is the way that you work. So these people need time to organize their thoughts. They move deliberately but slowly. They're gathering a lot of evidence, asking a lot of questions, and you as a driver are going to think they have a very slow pace to action. They don't respond well to being rushed. They also don't show any emotions, and they do seem uncommunicative at times and cool. So what can you do for them to make them feel more comfortable? You can actually slow down. You can listen. You can gather the facts. You can pay attention to the details, and you can listen. You can be task-oriented, and you can give them some time for fact analysis. The main thing is you need to be patient. And with this, I think you'll realize that things that you may have skipped over, if it was a bunch of drivers together, you will not skip over because the analytical people will make you pay attention to the details. So these people will actually help you be a better person if you slow down and let that happen. All right.
Thank you, Robyn. Our next presenter is Thomas Huber from the University of Florida in Gainesville, and Tom is going to talk to us about improving your personal effectiveness.
Yeah, good afternoon. So I was tasked with identifying strategies to make you effective or to and to identify good leaders. And I'm a little bit off topic in that I must disclose that I'm really not an expert in leadership or an expert in theories or styles. I've kind of enjoyed the whole session, was kind of looking forward to it. And so a little bit off topic from the other speakers, if you will. When you flip on SportsCenter, you look at the ESPN commentators and they list their resume. And so, what's my resume? I'm a division chief. I'm the vice chair. I've had some regional leadership responsibilities, but probably most importantly, I'm a married father of 4 kids. And for me, leadership is a lot like parenting, and that concept of tough love. What works as a parent, I think what works in leadership. It's that the ability to make kind of difficult decisions for the benefit of your kids, your institution, or for the individuals that you're involved with. And it's really not about being liked necessarily, and you can see that as a parent, but doing what's right for the organization, or really ultimately right for the kids. And I think we've learned all those skills, as Robyn said, as kids. That I love that book, Everything You Need to Be Effective in Life. You learned in kindergarten. Be honest, work hard, say thank you. Wash your hands after you flush. It's all very practical. A couple years back, I took a leadership course at our institution. It was a kind of a joint effort between the College of Medicine and the healthcare enterprise and the Harvard School of Public Health. And these blue slides I kind of pirated from them because they had a lot of good ideas. And one of which is leadership is really the art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for shared aspirations. Or alternatively, it's really the process of influencing others towards the achievement of organizational goals. And really the challenge is on a practical basis. What do we have to do with as leaders on a day-to-day basis is to really implement change. Get the naysayers in your organization to buy into your plan, to overcome the status quo, to respond to changing market forces. I think that the Obamacare is everyone's up in arms. It's not clear what that means for all of us or all our institutions. You have to resolve conflicts on a daily basis. Perhaps most difficult, we have to learn to manage personnel, and that concept that 10% of the people that you work with represent 90% of your personnel issues, and getting there is negotiating successfully with the people that you work with or the people in your organization above and below you. In that organizational leadership course I took, there are several quotes I found somewhat enlightening, one of which, if you're leading and no one's following, you're simply taking a walk. And it's amazing how much you can get done or how much you can accomplish if you don't care who takes credit for it. And I think that's a daily lesson for me. I would like to ultimately say I have the best division of vascular surgery in the country, but that's because I've hopefully bask in the light of the successes of the people that I'm working with. And Colin Powell said that the day the people that work for you quit bringing their problems to you, then that's the day that you've quit leading. In this leadership course I took, they made this list of here are the characters of a good leader, and I'm sitting there in the back trying to figure out, well, which ones, which one do I value? And those qualities are all leadership qualities. Honest, competent, forward-thinking, inspiring, intelligent. You can read as well as I. We don't all have those characteristics, but you can kind of meld them into your own personal leadership style. And all the styles and all the theories, you can be effective no matter what style you opt to have in your personality. In converse, the Harvard Business School says, well, what are the worst leaders? What are the characteristics of someone who's not a good leader? And someone that lacks energy or enthusiasm for what they do, those that accept mediocre performance, they don't have a clear vision and a direction, they exercise poor judgment, don't collaborate, don't follow the standards that they set for others, resist new ideas, don't learn from mistakes, lack interpersonal skills, and fail to develop others. So those are the characteristics. Those are what a bad leader does. What does a good leader do, or what does a good leader do every day? They challenge the process. They inspire a shared vision. They enable others to act. They model the way and encourage the heart. And what do those things mean? They look for challenges. They challenge the process, the opportunities to change, to grow, to innovate, to improve, really question the status quo. As far as inspiring a shared vision, they envision an uplifting and noble future. Think about where you were, think about where you want to be, write a vision statement, and enact that vision statement. They enable others to act. They encourage collaboration, promote cooperative goals, and build trust among the people that you work with, including, give power away, allow people to develop, provide choices, develop competencies, assign critical tasks, teach, and make other people successful. And as far as modeling the way, set an example and lead by example. Look in the mirror, see where you are, see what you want to be. Model the way by achieving small wins, promote consistent progress, and build commitment. And encourage the heart. Recognize the individual contributions to your success, and make those known. Advertise the people that work for you, and celebrate team accomplishments really on a regular basis. As far as who demonstrates good leadership characteristics, I thought about our own institution. I think really one of the better leaders in our own institution is our chairman, Kevin Behrens, about my age, a good friend. But on the strengths, he's honest, he's hardworking, completely tireless, a surgeon, respected throughout the institution, department focused, and once said that all his decisions are based on what's good for the department. Very decisive, and perhaps too decisive in fact, and things are not personal, incredibly loyal to the people that work for him, creative, forward-thinking, gets the big picture, and he's responsive. You send him something, he sends it back to you. Yeah, he's not perfect. Sometimes that department-focused, decisive personality can be interpreted as being somewhat impersonal, perhaps somewhat reactionary, and somewhat detached, perhaps from the rank and file. I think as we talk about the different theories and the different leadership approaches and the personality approaches, I think it's important to emphasize that I think all styles can be effective and should be incorporated in practice. The styles should be adapted really for the demands of the situation, the requirements of the people involved, and the challenges facing the organization. I see myself as a driver, and I just assume that all surgeons were drivers. When things start to go hell in a handbasket in the operating room, someone makes a decision and moves on and gets to the end of the case. And so in many ways, I assume that was all of us. That's not necessarily the case. But I think we all have to display or demonstrate those various characteristics in different settings. When Tony Sadawi gave his presidential address, it was somewhat inspiring. And he said there are leadership opportunities for all of us. I think say yes. When someone's asked you to do something, get involved, do a good job, and lo and behold, there'll be more leadership opportunities. And you don't really have to have a title to be a leader. Think about your own institution. Who's the best educator? Who's the best surgeon? Who's the best researcher? They're not necessarily the people that have the titles that go with that. So thank you.
So we're going to have some fun now. And what we're going to do is probably have groups of 5, maybe 5 people over there on that side. We'll have a facilitator with each group of 5. So maybe you can go back there or somebody come back and face each other. So what we're going to do is have each of you give you time to do your own survey. Basically, it's very easy. It's in the booklet. You tear open the perforation, and you fill it. It's like any other paper surveys you've taken. And when you add up the comments, the marks that the survey tells you, pretty much tells you your style. After that, in your group of 5 with the facilitators, we're going to have you discuss and list of behaviors that creates tension for you. Talk to your group about whether they agree with the behavior style that shows up on the survey, and what you can do to interact better. And then at the end, after about 15 minutes of discussion, your group will appoint one person to relay feedback to all of us. There's one very important thing. There is a questionnaire in there that one page, 6 questions that you will be asked to fill out at the end when we finish before 5 o'clock. So. And then following this, when you do your self-survey, we have a discussion. Following this, around 4 o'clock, we'll have a case study. There are 2 case studies, and we'll go through those so you can actually practice. And these are real-life situations, so you can practice about what this is going to be. So let's just have the facilitators. We'll break out and have people of 5 with 1 facilitator at each.
We're going to try to bring some feedback back to the whole group from all the individual discussions just for a few minutes. I'd ask each group to sort of focus this way, and perhaps we'll have some comments from each of you. Also, I'd remind you to fill out the not the evaluation, but the questionnaire, and hand it into your facilitator so that we have all those collected up. I know that some of the people have other meetings and things to attend, but if you have a few minutes to just comment on what you learned about yourself or what you learned about others from doing the questionnaire and from the discussion. Perhaps we could start with maybe the group at the back there. We have a facilitator, and is there a spokesperson back there wanting to make any comment about their style or anything?
So we just went over our various styles, and actually what we thought was interesting that we have mid-level surgeons, and then we have a medical student here, as well as a mid-level resident. And we were discussing the differences, how we're quite polar in, even if it's quite loud anyway. Okay, so we decided that those of us that are further along in our career were fairly polarized in our styles and in our responses. But it was interesting that the medical student and the resident were actually fairly in the middle of two different types of styles, and we were trying to figure out why that may be and whether their level of education and training may be influencing that and whether they may evolve as time goes on. And then we were just discussing how that affects our day-to-day interactions with our peers and our mentors and our bosses and other things.
Well, I think that's an excellent observation, and one of the things that we commented on in our committee discussions earlier were, are we trained to be drivers? I mean, when the patient is bleeding in the operating room, we're not asking for a lot of extra data, and we're not, asking someone to give us advice. We're making a decision and moving forward. So maybe there is something there. I think that's a good observation. Back here in the middle, do we have a comment from this group? Middle there, back. The participants can talk. It doesn't have to be the facilitator. Carry on.
Hi. So we had two drivers and two expressives and one driver, which is interesting because we actually both flip-flopped. I thought I was going to be a expressive, but I was a driver, and they thought they're going to be drivers, but they're expressive. So what we actually thought of is that in some situations it's very useful to be able to flip between, especially if you're close, because some people may be like very polarized drivers where others are, like me, 8 to 7. So in terms of optimizing your versatility, it's sometimes useful to not be quite as polarized.
Well, I think that's one of the comments that Ruth was bringing to us, that she's like a 15 and 0. Right, Ruth?
Which there's nothing wrong with.
And there's nothing wrong with being a 15 and 0. One of our group that I was facilitating was also a 15 and 0 for driving. I thought when I looked at mine I was going to be amiable, but I think I turned out to be analytic. Ruth probably thinks I'm analytic, I guess, because I ask too many questions. I want more information. I think you're the expressive, right?
I'm the expressive.
That's good.
And I'm quite polarized.
Yeah, polarized to being expressive. We'll move over to the next in the back here.
I think my group disbanded. We had a first-year resident and an attending from Maine, and I'm an academic senior administrator, and I think it was split between drivers and expressive, and I believe that we understood that we need to be versatile in the process. I think that would be my summary. But we have some good examples from Robyn, who was one of the lecturers and gave us some good examples of getting feedback and how to relate. And I was a residency director at one point, and I was kind of like the Socratic method and was really a driver. And I had a resident from New Orleans, and I was talking to my wife one night, and she says, don't you realize that he's from New Orleans, that he's manana, that he's not listening to you. You have to get another method of trying to reach him. And so I think over my career, I've learned to listen and try to be more versatile.
Okay. And I guess now we'll move up into the middle here, and then the biggest group gets the final say. So.
There were 3 of us, plus our facilitator. We were all drivers, so we spent a half hour arguing about who was going to be in charge.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
Now, actually, we had actually a productive conversation about some of our own personal interactions in our institutions and how we were frustrated by some results, might have changed our approach to have a better outcome, be more patient, I think was the most important thing we learned.
I think one of the features, although Bhagwan has told us that the company finds that healthcare workers are equally divided amongst the 4 groups, there are a lot of drivers in the room here. Okay, we'll move up to the front group here. We've got feedback.
We were also outnumbered. There's 4 drivers in our group, including our faculty, and 3 expressives, I believe. And I thought it was a pretty insightful experience. We learned a lot in terms of, one of my biggest problems is learning how to deal with people who are polar opposites, and getting some of the feedback in terms of strategies that other people have used was helpful. And realizing that I'm expressive, and realizing I'm not in the minority helped a little bit too.
So did you see that realization was going to make you feel better and have less tension for you as an expressive dealing with an analytic or a driver? Or did you see that you were looking at that to say, I can be a better leader by understanding what these other people's viewpoint is?
Well, a little
of both. So is it for your own benefit or for the team's benefit?
A little of both. Me being expressive, having the external validation makes me feel happy. But it's nice being able to deal with all the different leadership styles and really interacting with it in this kind of a form. I think it's made a difference in being able to understand it.
Any other comments from? Yeah.
I mean, does it seem that most of the surgeons in the group tend to be the majority are drivers, and the next biggest group is expressives?
Seems to be what we're seeing.
In this group, it just seems like that. I mean, the majority is either drivers or expressives. And is that just something to do with surgeons? But
the company says they don't know. I asked them about surgeons. They said they've never had a group of surgeons. Their data is all mixed up with all the healthcare workers. So they said they don't know. So we'll be the first to, yeah.
I would also think that if anything, drivers will be underrepresented in that these are people who are interested enough in management and self-improvement to come to a seminar. And I don't know, as a driver, I'm speaking of my own people here, it would seem like that more drivers may not be interested in that. That, they have the right way and they go forward.
And
Drivers are over at the aortic course next door.
yeah, and do you think as a driver that you're here because you have encountered personal tension from being a driver dealing with people who aren't, or do you think you're here because you didn't like the aortic work?
Well, that too. But no, I think I can do things better. I think that there's room for improvement in the way I deal with people. So I think it's a good place to come.
I think that's an excellent comment. One of the things that we often see in education and leadership is that the people who can self-assess really well are the people who relate well and develop well, and the people who are very, they're right and everybody else has to follow that, don't self-assess well. So the incompetent self-assessor becomes an incompetent leader. So I'm glad you're here because you're a good self-assessor, knowing you should be here. I think we'll invite Tom back up to introduce the case studies, and we'll move forward into that part of the meeting. Thank you very much. Tom?
Yeah, so on everyone's table in the package of information, there's a series of cases, and we're going to focus on case one, and the facilitators hopefully will lead the discussion. Mind you, these are just a starting point, if you will, for further discussion to talk about the styles and conflict resolution.
All right, we'll go ahead and wind up. I know that everybody's getting tired, and thank you very much for attending. I think that this was very helpful for the folks that were here. Hopefully you all thought so as well. We do have a very short 6-question multiple choice survey that we would like for everyone to fill out. Did you all get copies of it yet? Okay, we've got a little basket in the back to hand in. Just as a note, our Leadership Development Committee is planning on next year doing, as Dr. Freischlag said, a full-day leadership course at the SVS, not part of the post-grad course, but something more structured with more topics that people would sign up for ahead of time. We could send some of this different materials out. This was very focused, again, just to give people a taste of what we could offer and get some ideas. If any of you all have any ideas and things you would like to see the SVS offer to its members in terms of leadership development, leadership building blocks, please do let us know. So that is one plan for next year that we're going to do. We're also going to continue to publish some educational material on leadership in the Vascular Specialist. We had one article come out this month on the art of persuasion and getting buy-in. And then we're going to do that quarterly, so please look for those. And if you have any ideas on things you would like to see, do let us know. Fill out your surveys, and thank you very much. Have a good evening.